Right now, in the United States of America, an absolute paradox is unfolding quietly in plain sight. We are living in a moment where the people tasked with securing the airspace of the world's largest economy are literally selling their own blood plasma just to buy groceries, while billions of dollars vanish from the stock market over a geopolitical chess move thousands of miles away. Welcome back to Prism News. I am your host, and today, we are not just reading the headlines, we are diagnosing the underlying sickness of the entire geopolitical and financial system. Let us look at the raw facts from today, March 26, 2026. According to the latest reports, Transportation Security Administration workers are currently staring down a reality where they will not receive their next paycheck. A starting salary of $35,000 a year breaks down to roughly $729 a week before taxes. In major hubs like Sydney or New York, that does not even cover a basic studio apartment. Yet these are the exact individuals expected to prevent catastrophic events in the sky. While domestic infrastructure workers face this slow economic suffocation, the global energy market is experiencing a massive shockwave. Reports from the Wall Street Journal indicate a dramatic escalation in the Middle East, where a missile came dangerously close to an American F-18 fighter jet over Iranian airspace. The immediate reaction was not just military, it was financial. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plummeted by 469 points. The Nasdaq dropped by 521 points, officially entering correction territory. How does a delayed paycheck in America connect directly to a plunging tech index and a missile in the Middle East? It all comes down to the architecture of global capital and how the human element is being entirely neglected. But before we connect those dots, I want you to ask yourself a question. When the markets bleed billions in a single afternoon, who is actually absorbing those losses? Let me know your thoughts in the comments right now, because in Block 3, we are going to follow that exact money trail, and the answer might deeply unsettle you. Let us break down the psychology and the game theory behind the latest executive decision regarding the Strait of Hormuz. The president has just announced a 10-day extension for Iran to open this critical maritime choke point, shifting the original 5-day deadline. He accompanied this with a stark warning regarding Iranian power plants. To the untrained eye, this looks like standard diplomatic stalling, but through the lens of macroeconomics and military strategy, this is a highly calculated move. The Strait of Hormuz is the central artery of the global energy supply chain. According to data from the International Monetary Fund, any prolonged disruption in this specific corridor can trigger a cascading inflation event across Western economies. By extending the deadline by exactly 10 days, the administration is engaging in a classic pressure valve release. They are giving the global energy markets a brief window to price in the risk without triggering an immediate panic-buying frenzy of crude oil. However, this hesitation sends a very mixed signal to institutional investors. When you deploy 1,500 paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division to the region as reported earlier, you project kinetic readiness. But when you delay direct action, you create extreme market volatility. This 10-day window is not just about giving adversaries time to think, it is about giving domestic supply chains a moment to brace for impact. The cost of global freight and marine insurance has already skyrocketed, according to Reuters. Every single day that Strait remains contested, the cost of manufacturing, transport, and basic goods in the United States ticks upwards. This means that the $35,000 salary of a domestic security worker is losing its purchasing power by the hour. We are watching a masterclass in global tension management, but the question remains whether the domestic foundation is strong enough to handle the economic blowback. Keep watching, because what the lawmakers in Washington are doing right now in response to this crisis is going to completely change how you view national priorities. If you want to understand the true disconnect between the architects of the system and the people who keep the gears turning, you only need to look at the legislative schedule. At this exact moment, while global supply chains face extreme tension and domestic security personnel are relying on food banks, lawmakers on Capitol Hill are preparing to leave for a 2-week recess. This is not a conspiracy, it is a verified public schedule. Let that sink in. The individuals elected to manage the federal budget and ensure the operational integrity of the nation are taking a vacation while the Transportation Security Administration operates on zero-funded mandates. We are looking at a profound failure in resource allocation. Financial analysts from Bloomberg have consistently pointed out that government shutdowns or prolonged funding gaps cost the economy more in lost productivity than they save in budget cuts. When a government worker cannot pay their rent, they stop participating in the consumer economy. They stop buying retail goods, they default on auto loans, and they create a ripple effect that eventually hits the very corporations traded on the stock market. You have billions of dollars being allocated to maintain a global military posture, yet the domestic financial infrastructure is cracking under the weight of political gridlock. This is the definition of systemic fragility. When the people at the top of the pyramid can pause their responsibilities without financial penalty, while those at the bottom face immediate ruin, the system loses its legitimacy. And this lack of legitimacy breeds a very specific type of danger. It breeds cognitive fatigue. When people are worried about basic survival, they make mistakes. And when those people are in charge of thousands of lives in the sky, a mistake is not just a statistical error, it is a tragedy waiting to happen. Which brings us to the terrifying reality of what is currently happening in our domestic airspace right now. Let us do some real-world mathematical analysis on the concept of security. Can you truly buy national safety at a discount rate? The data suggests absolutely not. We are currently asking men and women to stand on the front lines of domestic aviation security for $35,000 a year. According to recent data from the Federal Reserve, the cumulative rate of inflation over the past few years has fundamentally destroyed the purchasing power of the middle class. When you factor in the rising costs of housing, healthcare, and essential utilities, $35,000 places a family dangerously close to the poverty line in many metropolitan areas. We are witnessing the illusion of security. You cannot expect hypervigilance from a human brain that is entirely consumed by financial survival. Chronic stress alters cognitive function. It reduces reaction times and impairs decision-making processes. We are systematically degrading the biological hardware of our essential workforce. When an individual has to spend their off-duty hours figuring out how to navigate the social safety net or donating plasma for extra cash, they are not resting. They are arriving for their next shift in a state of neurological depletion. This is not just an ethical failure, it is a massive economic risk. The aviation industry generates hundreds of billions of dollars for the United States economy. It relies on the flawless execution of protocols by thousands of interconnected workers. By underfunding the foundation of this pyramid, the legislative branch is gambling with the entire structure. If you are watching this and you have ever felt the crushing weight of systemic financial pressure, drop a comment below and share your experience. How does economic stress affect your daily focus? Because what we are seeing at the airports is just a macro version of what is happening in homes across the country. And the cracks in this foundation are already starting to show in the most terrifying ways possible. The consequences of this systemic stress are no longer theoretical. They are playing out in real time in our skies. Just days after a catastrophic incident at LaGuardia involving a passenger jet and a fire truck, we have reports of another harrowing close call. This time it involved a packed United Airlines commercial flight and a military Black Hawk helicopter. Audio from the air traffic controller captured the chilling phrase, "This is not good." Why is this happening with such alarming frequency? It is too simplistic to blame individual incompetence. We must look at the systemic pressure cooker these professionals are operating within. The Federal Aviation Administration has strict guidelines on rest and cognitive load for air traffic controllers, but those guidelines cannot account for the compounding psychological weight of a looming national crisis and a dysfunctional funding apparatus. These near misses are the physical manifestation of institutional burnout. When you combine an underpaid security apparatus, an overworked air traffic control grid, and the constant background noise of global geopolitical instability, you create a perfect storm for human error. The human brain is an incredible machine, but it has hard limits. It is not designed to process life or death decisions while simultaneously worrying about impending financial ruin. This is the hidden cost of the political gridlock we discussed in Block 3. The lawmakers taking their 2-week break are not the ones staring at a radar screen trying to separate a commercial airliner from a military chopper. The disconnect between policy and reality has never been wider. And while domestic infrastructure trembles, the financial markets are aggressively pricing in these cascading failures. The massive sell-off we saw earlier today is not just about oil, it is about a profound loss of confidence in the system's ability to govern itself. Let us turn our analytical lens back to the financial markets, because the numbers tell a story of institutional fear. When the Nasdaq plunges 521 points and enters correction territory, it is sending a massive distress signal. A correction by Wall Street definitions is a drop of 10% or more from a recent peak. This is not a standard daily fluctuation, it is a structural repricing of risk. Institutional investors, hedge funds, and algorithmic trading systems are looking at the totality of the situation. They see the 10-day countdown in the Middle East, they see the supply chain vulnerabilities, and they see the domestic legislative paralysis. Capital is inherently cowardly. When uncertainty reaches a critical mass, capital flees from risk assets like technology stocks and seeks refuge in safe havens. The interconnectedness of the modern global economy means that a threat to power plants in Iran immediately impacts the valuation of a software company in Silicon Valley. Why? Because that software company relies on global energy stability to power its data centers and global consumer confidence to sell its products. The interconnected web of global finance is highly sensitive to disruptions in the energy matrix. Furthermore, the lack of a cohesive domestic policy regarding essential worker funding adds another layer of sovereign risk. If the United States cannot effectively manage its own internal logistics and security apparatus, international confidence in the dollar and U.S. equities begins to erode. We are looking at a complex feedback loop where geopolitical tension creates market volatility, which in turn creates domestic economic anxiety, further stressing the already burdened workforce. It is a downward spiral, driven by short-term political maneuvering rather than long-term strategic planning. And as the markets brace for the end of the 10-day extension, the pressure on the average citizen continues to mount. To fully grasp the absurdity of the current paradigm, we must examine the allocation of national resources. As I mentioned earlier, 1,500 paratroopers from the elite 82nd Airborne Division have been deployed to the Middle East. The logistical cost of moving, sustaining, and equipping a force of this magnitude across the globe is astronomical. We are talking about billions of dollars in defense spending being activated at a moment's notice. Yet simultaneously, the government claims an inability to properly fund the individuals guarding its domestic airports. This is the military budget paradox. It is a system that can project immense kinetic power across oceans, but struggles to provide a living wage to the people maintaining order at home. According to independent financial analysts, the cost of a single advanced missile system could fund the salaries of thousands of transportation security workers for an entire year. This is not a critique of military readiness. It is a critique of unbalanced national priorities. A nation cannot project strength abroad if its internal infrastructure is decaying. The Roman Empire did not fall simply because of external pressures. It fell because its internal logistics and social contracts degraded over time. When citizens see billions flowing outward, while their own communities face austerity and funding gaps, the social fabric begins to tear. This disparity fuels the exact type of public distrust and anger we are seeing today. People are not asking for an end to national defense. They are asking for a rational distribution of capital that recognizes domestic stability as a critical component of national security. Until that balance is restored, the system will remain fundamentally unstable. But amid all this chaos and systemic failure, there is an incredible outlier, a story that defies the logic of our current stress epidemic. We have spent this entire analysis diagnosing a system that is breaking human beings down. But I want to pivot to a profound anomaly that offers a masterclass in human resilience. Today, a man named Arthur Green, a veteran of multiple wars, threw out a ceremonial first pitch at a baseball game. He is 109 years old. Think about that for a moment. This is a human being who has lived through the Great Depression, multiple global conflicts, and immense historical trauma, yet he remains physically and mentally spry. How does a man survive a century of global chaos while modern workers are collapsing under the weight of financial stress by age 40? The answer lies in the biology of stress response. Modern society has trapped us in a state of chronic low-level cortisol release. The constant anxiety over unpaid bills, political dysfunction, and looming global crises keeps our nervous systems in a perpetual fight-or-flight state. This chronic stress destroys cardiovascular health and cognitive function over time. Arthur Green and the incredibly resilient individuals of his generation often possessed a different mechanism for processing trauma. They faced acute life or death stress, but they also had periods of complete psychological reset, often supported by deep community bonds and a different relationship with information consumption. Today, we are bombarded with the crisis of the hour, 24 hours a day. We have lost the ability to build biological shields against the noise. The lesson here is not just inspirational, it is deeply scientific. If we want to survive the geopolitical and financial turbulence we have outlined today, we must take control of our own biological responses. We cannot control the markets or the decisions on Capitol Hill, but we can control how we process the stress. We must learn to disconnect, to build internal resilience, and to protect our cognitive health from a system that demands constant anxiety. As we wrap up this comprehensive analysis, the architecture of the current crisis becomes crystal clear. We are not just facing an isolated issue with the Transportation Security Administration or a temporary market dip. We are witnessing a convergence of failures, a geopolitical chess game that threatens the global energy supply chain, a domestic political system that prioritizes optics over operational stability, and an economic model that extracts maximum labor while providing minimal security. The 10-day countdown will eventually expire, and the markets will react accordingly. The lawmakers will eventually return from their recess. But the underlying vulnerability of a system that relies on financially exhausted individuals to maintain critical infrastructure will remain until fundamental changes are made. Here at PrismNews, our goal is to give you the tools to see through the noise, to understand that the plunging stock market and the near miss in the sky are symptoms of the same underlying disease. Knowledge is your best defense against systemic instability. If you understand the mechanics of the game, you can better position yourself financially and mentally to weather the storm. Take the lesson of resilience from the 109-year-old veteran. Protect your peace, your focus, and your financial foundation. I want to hear from you. What do you think is the most critical failure in the system we discussed today? Is it the geopolitical strategy, the financial imbalance, or the domestic policy gridlock? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the real mechanics of our world. Until next time, stay informed, stay resilient, and keep questioning the narrative. This is PrismNews signing off.